Good morning. My name's Terry Mundy of Lloyds Register. You've heard quite a lot about BOPAS this morning, and it is my intention to provide you with a bit more detail during the course of my presentation. BOPAS was a collaborative venture between Build Offsite, Lloyds Register, BLP, and RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. And the intention was, in introducing or developing a process such as BOPAS, to manage the risk to which lenders and valuers were exposed when they were confronted with non-traditional construction. I'll just run through a couple of scenarios with you just to hopefully reinforce that. Our developer decides he's going to go to the lender to seek mortgage finance in support of project finance. If he goes with a traditional design, then there's every likelihood that the lender will give him the thumbs up and say, okay, we'll provide you with mortgage finance subject to the usual conditions, and then he can go away and seek to gain his project finance on the basis of a potential return on the investment. If, on the other hand, he presents non-traditional construction, there's every likelihood that the lender will say, no, I'm sorry, that finance will not be forthcoming. It's not quite as black and white as that, of course, but nevertheless, in general terms, that would be the outcome. However, our hapless and dejected developer suddenly remembers that he's got actually BOPAS, to which the lender says, well, why didn't you tell me? And then the developer goes on to demonstrate through accessing the BOPAS website exactly what BOPAS, what accreditation he's got. He will demonstrate that he has accredited the manufacturer, or the manufacturer of his product is accredited. He will demonstrate that the constructor has been accredited under BOPAS. He will demonstrate that the construction system is BOPAS accredited, and that the site has been BOPAS approved in relation to that construction system. On the basis of demonstrating to the lender that he has a BOPAS accreditation for all aspects of his development, then if that lender is one of those that signed on to BOPAS, then that mortgage finance will be forthcoming. So far, we've talked about what BOPAS facilitates. I just wanted now to explain how we got to where we are. This is a timeline of where we started from, first of all with a meeting with the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, who explained to us the predicament they were in, and that their valuers, when going to value non-traditional constructions, first of all, they may have had a problem recognizing it was non-traditional, because of course a good non-traditional looks just like traditional. But and therefore, if they don't recognize it, there may be an issue because they may not value it appropriately. And if they do recognize it as non-traditional, they won't necessarily know what the construction system is. So again, they have a problem with valuing it correctly. And at the time, the valuers were under the cosh insofar as people who defaulted on their mortgage, the lenders who were providing that mortgage then immediately went to their solicitors and asked them to look into the valuation. And if that property had been overvalued, then litigation took place. And a great many of the RICS members went out of business simply because they could no longer afford the professional indemnity associated with those sort of scenarios. So we had that discussion with RICS to begin with. We looked at how we could best address the situation, and then we had a meeting with the Council of Mortgage Lenders to understand what the obstacles were from their perspective to the introduction of non-traditional construction. They then established a working group with ourselves, with RICS, Lloyds Register, BLP, Build Offsite, some valuer organisations, and RBS, Santander, Nationwide, and Lloyds Banking Group. And over a period of about a year or so, we got to understand what the issues were, what the perceived risks and concerns of the lenders were, and we sought to develop a system that would actually mitigate those risks, provide them with an assurance that those issues had been addressed. We then went into a phase of carrying out some pilots, and we carried out pilots on 3 fairly diverse organisations. One was Fusion, another was Hemcrete, and the third was Stuart Milne. Having completed the pilot, we then demonstrated exactly the extent and nature of the rigour of the process that we'd undertaken, and they were particularly taken with the rigour of the durability assessment. And at the end of the process, they agreed that the process that we'd presented to them was relevant and met their concerns and mitigated many of the risks to which they felt they would be exposed when lending against non-traditional. We then developed the BOPAS database, which is pivotal to this whole thing and which I'll demonstrate later on. We presented that process to the Council of Mortgage Lenders. The Council of Mortgage Lenders said that, yep, generally they felt that it met their requirements, and likewise the Building Societies Association. And then we had BOPAS launch at the RICS head office in London in April 2003. Shortly thereafter, BOPAS appeared on the Council of Mortgage Lenders website. So that's where we have come from in terms of developing BOPAS. Now I'd just like to provide you with an overview of exactly what BOPAS is. BOPAS comprises 2 elements. It comprises an accreditation process, which we, Lloyds Register, operate, and it also comprises a durability and maintainability assessment, which BLP control and run. First of all, the accreditation element comprises 4 elements, 4 accreditations, and providers can either go for one or all of them as may be appropriate. Design, construction, manufacture, and project management. The assessment, I would say, would emphasize is not a compliance assessment. We don't go over ISO 9000 stuff, and people always say, well, we've got ISO 9000, 14000, and 18000. Why do we need to be accredited for something else? Ours is exclusively a risk-based approach. We come at it a completely different angle from a compliance ISO standard, as most of the organizations that we've evaluated would attest to. Our assessment comprises a 1-day gap analysis where we just discuss and have interviews with key reports within the organization we're evaluating, and then we produce a gap report following that. Oh, by the way, it is a gap between where the organization is and where Lloyds Register's standards are, and our standards, or the BOPAS standards, are on our website for all to see, so it wouldn't come as a great shock when we actually turned up and evaluated you against them. We issue a gap analysis report at the end of the gap analysis, and once the issues have been addressed, then the organization advises us that that is the case, and we will then go back in and carry out a full evaluation of the organization, focusing principally on those key issues. I mean, as I said, it's a risk management process, but what drops out are the key risk areas, which are competency management, process control, procurement management, configuration management, and effective communication. And at the end of it, we produce a radar map which identifies where the organization is relative to where it needs to be accredited, where it is in relation to best in class, and also it provides evidence, tangible and positive evidence of continuous improvement on an ongoing basis, which of course most organizations now seek to be able to demonstrate. That is a bigger picture of the radar map, which I won't go over again. And then the second phase, which I mentioned, is the durability and maintainability assessment for a duration of a minimum of 60-year life with no disproportionate maintenance. The other feature associated with this is that having been through that process, then the system can be assured of at least one warranty provider, because BLP will provide that warranty in the event that is the route that the developer wishes to take. Of course, he has the option to take alternative routes. He can take NHBC, was mentioned earlier, and a Premier Guarantee, and we are in discussions with both organisations with a view to them participating in this process from the perspective of warranty provision. The BLP process has been developed through being based on a range of different standards and best practices, and it is a risk management model which is both very flexible and very rigorous insofar as it can actually deal with anything that's thrown at it in the way of non-traditional, and in that regard, of course, it's unique, because I don't think there's any other system around that will do that. And it has got to the position it is based upon 20 years of research. Many of you, of course, know the BLP system, and I don't intend to go into it in any more detail, but Paul and Jeff are here today in the event you have any questions on that subject to answer them. So what we have is a system which provides confidence to surveyors, valuers, lenders and purchasers about the long-term durability of the system, and in the safe knowledge that they will have a warranty provision should they actually require it. I mentioned earlier on about the use of the BOPAS website to demonstrate to lenders that a system and constructor and site are all approved under the BOPAS process. That same provision needs to be available to valuers. Otherwise, the second element of the BOPAS process does not really serve its purpose. And as I mentioned earlier on, it was the valuers that we had discussions with that sort of kick-started this process in the first place. The system as it existed was that the manufacturer was keen to sell his product, the developer was keen to buy, and the purchasers were keen to purchase the properties, and the lender was keen to lend, subject to a report from the valuer, a positive report from the valuer. The difficulty was, as I mentioned earlier on, that the valuer, in the event he recognized it as a non-traditional, he would then contact the lender and he would say, what is your policy in relation to lending against non-traditional? To which the lender would provide a negative response. Because actually no lenders have a lending policy, to the best of my knowledge, to lend against non-traditional, which is why we had the hurdle we had. So in the event that, of course, the valuer sees it as a traditional, then there's no problem, and the purchase will go ahead. In the event that he sees it as a non-traditional, then we have the scenario I've just described. So what's the solution? The solution is the BOPAS database. So rerunning the process again, the manufacturer sells to the developer has a purchaser, the purchaser then seeks lending, and the lender instructs the valuer to go and value the property. The valuer recognizes it's non-traditional. He reports back to the lender, and the lender says, well, if it's BOPAS accredited, then it's not an issue. And so the valuer will go onto the BOPAS database, punch in the postcode of the property he's looking at, determine that it's BOPAS accredited, and the purchase will go through on that basis. So, we've talked about the BOPAS database, and I'm hopefully going to just demonstrate how it operates. And we've been successful. So this is the BOPAS database, and we can view the technologies that have been accredited. which, as I've mentioned earlier, are hemcrete, Stuart Milne, SIPs, and timber frame. We can look at the accredited organisation and what they are accredited for, and we can also look at search for sites that are accredited, and there's various sites there. I'll just actually demonstrate how, when a valuer punches in a postcode, he can go to a specific site and get details of the technology. So this is a Stuart Milne site in Bath, and we can get a view, a satellite view of that form, or we can get a map view to assist the developer, the evaluator, to gain access to the site. And then, having punched in that postcode, he can then identify what the technology is, and in this case it's Stuart Milne technology, and he has a rundown of the system. That applies to all the pilots that have gone through the process at the moment, and you will notice, of course, that we only have 3 organisations on there at the moment. Those are the 3 pilots that we went through the process with, and at the moment we have had 40 inquiries, of which 10 are progressing. So the momentum which both Nick and Dennis referred to earlier on, in terms of alignment of the planets and all the pressures associated with moving towards non-traditional off-site construction, are very much coming together, and we view BOPAS as facilitating that process. So, just to recap then, the BOPAS aim is promotional and business performance targets, facilitate lending against non-traditional construction systems. That's fundamental to the whole thing. And then fringe benefits, if you like, business performance improvement through increased transparency and accountability, fundamental again to the process, product durability assessed for 60 years, performance benchmarked against best in class, and integrated risk management process for business, product and activity. Thank you very much.